I was born into one of the wealthiest families in Saudi Arabia. My great grandfather had been an advisor to the king, and my father held a position most people could only dream of. We lived in a palace compound in Riyadh with marble floors that echoed when you walked, fountains that ran day and night, and servants who appeared before you even realized you needed something. I had my own wing of our home, my own driver, my own everything. From the outside, my life looked like a fairy tale. But here's what nobody tells you about living in a golden cage. You can have everything money can buy and still feel completely empty inside. I followed every rule perfectly. I prayed 5 times a day, covered myself properly, never questioned anything I was taught. I memorized the prayers in Arabic even though I didn't always understand what I was saying. I fasted during Ramadan. I was the model daughter, the perfect princess, the girl every family wanted their son to marry. But late at night, when I was alone in my room, I would stare at the ceiling and feel this ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. It was like I was following a map to somewhere I'd never actually wanted to go. Does that make sense? I was doing everything right, but nothing felt right. When I was 19, my father arranged my engagement to a cousin I'd met twice. He was from a good family, very wealthy, very connected. The wedding was planned for 6 months away. Everyone was thrilled. Everyone except me. But you don't say no in my world. You smile, you nod, you accept your fate. Around that time, I started having these dreams. In the dreams, I would see a man dressed in white, and he would look at me with eyes so full of love that I would wake up crying. He never spoke in the dreams, but somehow I knew he was calling me. Calling me to what, I had no idea. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just wedding stress, just my mind playing tricks on me. Then one afternoon, I was in my room scrolling through my phone when I accidentally clicked on a video. It was a testimony from a woman in Iran who had converted from Islam to Christianity. I should have closed it immediately. In Saudi Arabia, even watching something like that could get you in serious trouble. But I couldn't look away. She was talking about Jesus not as a prophet, but as God himself. She said he had died for her sins and risen from the dead. She said she had a personal relationship with him. That phrase stuck in my mind. Personal relationship. I'd never heard anyone talk about God like that before. In my religion, God was distant, demanding, someone you obeyed out of fear. But this woman was talking about God like he was her friend, her father, someone who loved her individually. I watched more videos. I read articles on websites I had to access through a VPN because they were blocked in Saudi Arabia. I read the Bible on my phone with my brightness turned down low, terrified someone would walk in and see. And the more I read, the more something inside me came alive. It was like I'd been living in black and white my whole life, and suddenly someone turned on the color. Jesus said things that shook me to my core. He said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." I was so weary. He said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." He didn't say he would show me the way. He said he was the way. He said he came to seek and save the lost. And I realized, maybe for the first time in my life, that I was lost. 3 months before my wedding, I prayed to Jesus for the first time. I locked my bathroom door, sat on the floor, and I whispered, "Jesus, if you're real, if you really died for me and rose again, I want to know you." I felt ridiculous. I felt terrified. I felt like I was committing the ultimate betrayal of my family, my culture, my entire identity. But then something happened that I still can't fully explain. It was like a presence filled that bathroom. A warmth started in my chest and spread through my whole body. And I heard, not with my ears, but somehow in my spirit, a voice that said, "I have always known you, and I have always loved you." I started sobbing. I couldn't stop. 20 years of emptiness, of going through the motions, of pretending to be someone I wasn't, all came pouring out. And in that moment, I knew. I knew Jesus was real. I knew he was God. I knew he had been the one calling me in those dreams. Everything I'd been taught my whole life said this was wrong, this was shirk, this was unforgivable. But every cell in my body was telling me it was true. For the next 2 months, I lived a double life. During the day, I went through the motions of wedding planning, smiling at fabric samples and tasting cakes. But every night, I would lock my door and spend hours reading the Bible and praying to Jesus. I felt like I was living in two completely different worlds, and I knew eventually they would collide. I tried to be so careful, I never told anyone. I cleared my search history obsessively. I used encrypted apps, but I made one mistake. One tiny, stupid mistake that changed everything. I had saved a worship song on my phone, a Christian worship song in English. I would listen to it with headphones late at night, and it helped me feel connected to God in a way I'd never experienced before. One afternoon, I was in my room and my younger brother walked in without knocking. I had been listening to the song and had just taken my headphones out. My phone was on my bed and the music was still playing quietly through the speaker. He heard it. He stopped in the doorway and his face changed. "What is that?" he asked. I grabbed my phone and turned it off, but it was too late. "Nothing," I said, "just a song." "That was Christian music," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "That was worship music." I tried to laugh it off, tried to make an excuse, but he just stared at me. Then he turned and walked out. I sat there on my bed, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I told myself maybe he would let it go, maybe he wouldn't say anything. He told our father that same night. My father came to my room with my mother and my uncle. I'd never seen him look at me the way he looked at me then, like I was a stranger, like I was something disgusting he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. "Is it true?" he asked. "Have you been watching Christian content?" I could have lied. Maybe I should have lied. But something in me couldn't do it anymore. I was so tired of pretending. So I looked at my father and I said, "Yes." The room went silent. My mother started crying. My uncle started pacing. And my father, he just stared at me like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Do you understand what you've done?" he said quietly. "Do you understand you've brought shame on this entire family?" They locked me in my room. They took my phone, my laptop, everything. For 3 days, I sat alone with nothing but my thoughts and my prayers. I prayed to Jesus constantly. I asked him if I'd made a mistake, if I'd misunderstood, if any of this was worth it. And every time I prayed, I felt that same peace that had filled me in the bathroom. Even in my fear, even in my isolation, I knew I wasn't alone. On the 4th day, my father came to my room with 2 men I'd never seen before. They were from the religious police, the Committee for the Promotion of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice. They asked me questions for hours. Had I renounced Islam? Did I believe Jesus was God? Did I believe Muhammad was a false prophet? Each question was a trap. Each answer could be used against me. I told them the truth. I said I believed Jesus Christ was the Son of God, that he died for my sins and rose from the dead, and that he was the only way to salvation. I watched my father's face crumble as I spoke. My mother was sobbing in the corner, but I couldn't take it back. It was the truth. They arrested me that night. They took me from my palace bedroom and put me in a cell that was bare concrete and smelled like urine and fear. I went from silk sheets to a thin mat on the floor, from 300 thread count to nothing at all. The trial was a formality. In Saudi Arabia, apostasy, leaving Islam, is punishable by death. There's no gray area, no room for interpretation. I had publicly confessed to converting to Christianity. The verdict was decided before I ever entered the courtroom. My family hired lawyers, tried to argue I was mentally ill, tried to get the charges reduced, but I wouldn't cooperate. When the judge asked if I wanted to recant, to proclaim the Shahada and return to Islam, I said no. When he asked if I understood I was choosing death, I said yes. He sentenced me to execution by beheading. The date was set for 3 weeks later. They sent me back to my cell, and for the first time since my arrest, I completely broke down. I'd been strong during the interrogations, strong during the trial, but now reality hit me. I was 20 years old and I was going to die. I was going to be taken into a public square and executed like a criminal because I believed in Jesus. I curled up on that mat and I cried until I had no tears left. And then I started to pray. Jesus, I said, I don't want to die. I'm scared. I'm so scared. But if this is your will, please give me the courage to face it. Please don't let me deny you when the time comes. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. I was in prison, waiting to die, but I experienced more peace than I'd ever felt in my palace. Other prisoners would hear me praying and think I was crazy. The guards mocked me, called me a traitor and a fool. But every morning when I woke up, I felt Jesus with me. I would sing worship songs quietly to myself. I would recite Bible verses I'd memorized, and I felt held. My family came to visit me once. My mother begged me to recant. She told me they could stop the execution if I would just say the words, just pretend to return to Islam. I could lie, she said. God would understand. I told her I couldn't. I told her I loved her, but I loved Jesus more. She left sobbing. The night before my execution, I couldn't sleep. I lay on that mat staring at the ceiling, and I talked to Jesus like he was right there in the cell with me. I told him about my fears, my regrets, the things I wished I'd done differently. I thanked him for saving me, for loving me, for giving me a purpose worth dying for. And I asked him to take care of my family, to somehow use my death to reach them. Around 3 in the morning, I finally dozed off, and I had a dream. In the dream, I was standing in that public square where they do executions. I was kneeling, blindfolded, waiting for the blade. But then I heard a voice say, "Do not be afraid." And I felt hands on my shoulders, warm and strong. The voice said, "I am with you, even in the valley of the shadow of death." I woke up with tears running down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. I knew, somehow I just knew, that no matter what happened in a few hours, I was going to be okay. Either Jesus would deliver me or Jesus would take me home. Either way, I wouldn't be alone. At dawn, the guards came to my cell. They put me in a van and drove me to the square. I could see the crowd gathering. I could see the platform. I could see the sword. My hands were shaking, but I kept praying under my breath. Jesus, I trust you. Jesus, I trust you. Jesus, I trust you. They walked me up onto the platform. They made me kneel. They tied my hands. Someone read out the charges and the sentence. I heard my name, heard the word apostate, heard the collective murmur of the crowd. Then they blindfolded me. Everything went dark. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I could hear someone praying in Arabic, could hear the rustle of the executioner's robes as he took his position. I felt the sword tap against the back of my neck once, twice, as he lined up the strike, and I prayed one last prayer. Jesus, into your hands I commit my spirit. Then I heard the sword whistle through the air, but the blade never touched me. Instead, I felt those same warm hands from my dream grab my shoulders. I felt myself being pulled backward off the platform. I heard shouts of confusion, screams from the crowd. Someone yelled, "Where did she go?" Another voice shouted, "She vanished." I was still blindfolded, but I wasn't kneeling anymore. I was standing on solid ground and I could feel wind on my face. I pulled off the blindfold and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was in the middle of the desert. Miles and miles of empty sand in every direction. The sun was rising, painting the sky pink and gold. There was no square, no crowd, no executioner. Just me, alone in the wilderness, with my hands still tied behind my back. I fell to my knees and I started laughing and crying at the same time. He did it. Jesus actually did it. He pulled me out of there the same way he pulled Peter out of prison, the same way he parted the Red Sea for Moses. 1 second I was about to die, and the next second I was free. I managed to get my hands untied. I had no idea where I was or how I was going to survive. I had no water, no food, no phone. I was wearing the white dress they'd put on me for the execution. I should have been terrified, but all I felt was overwhelming joy. I started walking. I didn't know which direction, I just walked. I prayed and I sang and I thanked God with every step. After about 2 hours, I saw something in the distance. As I got closer, I realized it was a small Bedouin camp. A few tents, some camels, a family. I approached carefully, not sure how they would react to a random woman appearing out of the desert. An older man came out of one of the tents. He looked at me, at my white dress, at my bare feet, and his eyes widened. "You're the princess," he said, "the one who was supposed to be executed this morning." I didn't know what to say. He gestured for me to sit. He brought me water and dates. And then he told me something that made my jaw drop. His wife, he said, had been having dreams for the past week. Dreams about a woman in white who needed help escaping the country. In the dreams, Jesus had told her to prepare, that they would be instruments of his deliverance. They helped me. They gave me different clothes, hid me in their truck, and drove me to the Jordanian border. They knew people, had connections. Within 24 hours of my supposed execution, I was across the border and on my way to a safe house run by underground Christians. I learned later that my execution had caused chaos. The video, yes, there was supposed to be a video, never showed my death because I had literally disappeared. Some people claimed I'd used sorcery. Others said it was a trick, that my family had bribed someone. The government tried to cover it up, claimed I'd escaped prison before the execution. But people who'd been there, who'd seen it happen, they knew the truth. They'd seen me vanish. I eventually made it to Europe, where I was granted asylum. I'll never be able to go back to Saudi Arabia. I'll never see most of my family again. I lost my inheritance, my home, my country, everything I'd known. But I gained something so much greater. I gained Jesus. I gained freedom. I gained a purpose that's bigger than any palace or title or fortune. I'm telling you this story because I want you to know that Jesus is real and he is still in the business of miracles. He still delivers his people. He still breaks chains. He still does the impossible. I should be dead right now, but I'm alive because Jesus literally pulled me out of the hands of my executioners. Maybe you're in a situation that feels impossible. Maybe you're trapped in something that seems like there's no way out. Maybe you've been told your whole life that God is distant and demanding and you have to earn his love through perfect obedience. I'm here to tell you that's not who Jesus is. Jesus is the God who shows up in prison cells. He's the God who appears in the desert. He's the God who stops swords in midair and makes princesses vanish and turns executions into escapes. He's personal, he's present, and he loves you more than you can possibly imagine. My life didn't turn out anything like I planned. I thought I would marry a prince and live in a palace and raise children in wealth and comfort. Instead, I'm a refugee living in a tiny apartment in a country where I barely speak the language. But I've never been happier. I've never been more free. Because I know Jesus and I know He's real and I know He'll never leave me. So here's my question for you. What impossible situation are you facing right now that maybe, just maybe, Jesus is asking you to trust Him with?